just wish these guys actually came to a compromise because, according to the bylaws and the rules and regulation, Fecafoot actually is the one that's supposed to appoint a coach. But due to the so-called poor performances of Rigobert Song, the ministry went ahead and appointed Mark Brace, and that has actually helped deteriorate, the conditions, the working conditions between Fecafoot, and the ministry.
Yes, and I think this was even made further worse by the incident in May 2024 between Samuel Eto'o and Mark Brace, where Mark Brace was found to have disrespected Samuel Eto'o face in the executive committee meeting, leading to Samuel Eto'o or the Fecafoot appointing a new management team with Martin Tungumpile as the head coach, with a staff, and we then saw a situation where there were two national team coaching staff, one appointed by the Ministry of Sports and Physical Education, and one appointed by Fecafoot, which led to some very embarrassing situations when players were arriving, and in terms of match organization, which officials were going to be present and which officials were not going to be present, and this has also led to the population or the fans dividing in camps. You've got the Eto'o camp and you've got the camp of the Ministry of Sports and Physical Education, which is not a good situation to find ourselves in at the moment.
Yes, it's quite unfortunate, and no matter what side, right, or which side you actually think is right, the fact remains that this is poor, for our football, because now we see two sides, two camps fighting each other during matches. We see basically like two different coaches. Mark Brees is not talking to the other side, and that cannot be good for our football, regardless of of whoever you think is right.
Yeah. The other issue, and the most significant issue for me here, is that, with the appointment of Mark Brees, in one of his post-match conferences, Mark Brees said that he was signed to win. And many people are in support of Mark Brees' appointment at the moment because he is winning games. But for me, that statement was a bit worrying, because the emphasis is to win, and that's a good thing, But then when you look at the situation with Rigobert Song, yes, he wasn't winning games, but there was a clear plan of transition in place of moving away from the squad that was to integrating younger players, a new generation. So they had a plan. They were looking 4 years down the line. So now we have players who were not in the squad, like Michael Ngadu, Christian Basogok, and then we had players, Martin Ongla, and then you had players like Vincent Abubakar, Mumin Gamale, who were already on the sidelines. They were in the squad, but they were not playing significant roles as before. So for me, that's a reversal of fortunes. I feel that we've gone one step back. Even though we're winning, 2 years down the line, we might find ourselves struggling with players who are not used to playing at this level. And that would mean that even though we have qualified for tournaments, it might not make any impact or any difference in terms of the squad that we will have at that time, because we would have less experienced players playing for Cameroon, because suddenly we would find that the players that have been playing are not up to speed anymore. So for me, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah, and I also think that there was an opportunity because with Rigobert Song as head coach of Cameroon, there was that energy from the fans, happy to see a Cameroonian on the bench, But after the tournament in Ivory Coast, as I said earlier, his performances, some of especially me, I did actually say that Rigobert Song did not do a good job. But talking to some other football fans, they said there was a reason why Samuel to actually appointed Rigobert Song as head coach. And maybe it's because of the leadership that they have had while they were playing with the Lions, and that they could work together. However, it did not work. So moving forward, we see the ministry coming and appoint a foreigner, okay, someone who's actually new to Cameroonian football, not only a foreigner, someone that doesn't know Cameroon football. And although we qualify for the AFCON, we are second in World Cup qualifiers. Some people still don't believe that that was the right decision. I mean, what's your take on that?
I, for one, personally, I think that whilst Mark Brice is doing well, I feel that Cameroon is in a difficult position. I feel that we're gaining in some aspects, but we're losing in many other very important aspects. And listen out on me for this one. Now, so I believe that there is a disconnect. So we have a manager who has no influence whatsoever, no oversight in any other of the Cameroonian national sides. So from under 16 to the intermediate Lions, there is no connection. And this is where Rigobert Song was very important in terms of his appointment. Now, I am a proponent of psychology, sports psychology in football, the mental side of the game. Tactics is not that much difficult for managers, and many people understand tactics very well. Supporters, fans, many people understand tactics. The difficulty is how you transmit that knowledge, the philosophy, the culture to your players. I feel that Rigobert Song and Samuel Eto'o were two of those born winners that were part of the Cameroonian team between 1998 until their retirement. And I believe that Rigobert Song's appointment was going to play a very significant role in terms of changing the mentality of the players, of this current crop of Cameroonian players, to make them become winners. Whilst he was changing, the results were not very good. And I have heard and listened to analysis about currently you can see that there is a style of play, there is a philosophy, as if when Rigobert Song was a manager, there wasn't. Rigobert Song oversaw one of the most difficult games in Cameroon's modern football history. That was the masterminding the victory in Algeria, over Algeria, for the World Cup qualifications. You know, Cameroon was in a very tough group at the World Cup, and Rigobert Song did very well with the Cameroon national side. Even though they didn't get through, many teams, 50% of the teams at the World Cup would not get through that group. You know, it was a very strong group. So I believe that whilst we did not do very well at the AFCON, I didn't expect Cameroon to win the AFCON. You know, I wasn't in fan mode. I was in an objective mode. I didn't expect Cameroon to win that tournament. So in as much as we are winning now, I do not still think Cameroon will still win the AFCON when it comes up. We could. There is the possibility. There's always the chance. But I do feel that we've gone one step back. We've got Abubakar coming towards the end of his years. We've got no ready-made person who is now used to that environment, who is experienced, which is what Song was trying to do to prepare that transition. Midfield, we've got Carlos Baleba who's coming with Anguissa, but Anguissa is not getting younger. So we need to start preparing for a change or someone who could help Anguissa in tournaments. You know, we have seen the arrival of Namaso. Namaso has very little international experience. He's not playing much for Porto in Portugal, you know. So whilst he was held in his maiden game against Libya, that is not a game in which I would be judging someone on, you know, as compared to other Cameroonian players that we have. It is going to be difficult if we're relying on players who are not playing for their teams. You know, I think the time was right for someone else to be stepping in as a centre forward for the Cameroonian national team and for Ngadio to move on. But we're taking steps back. as opposed to steps forward in terms of rebuilding our team. I don't know what your thoughts are around that.
Well, I'm one of those who actually thought that the best song was not the right man for the job. Also, based on the way he was selected, I thought that there were many qualified other coaches, and I think that a lack of a competitive local league has put us in such a situation because we are not seeing our coaches in action. So if we don't have coaches, or if we don't have a league that can be a good platform for our coaches to compete against each other, basically we are going by try and error. Okay, Rigobert Song actually failed in the lower levels where he coached with the Cameroon national team. And another problem is that we don't have continuity. We saw how continuity has helped a country like Senegal. You know, coaches from the lower leagues, they go up to the higher leagues and they are doing well. Well, they let Aliou Cisse go, so we shall see how their next coach actually does. If there's some sort of continuity for them. As far as the players are concerned, you have something to say? Did you have something to say? I'll tell
Yeah, I
you.
was going to say, you touched on the issue of Rigobert Song not being successful at the lower levels, and in terms of his credentials to manage the national side. I'll give you two examples. Okay, there is a manager currently, the manager of Comoros. He's a guy called Stefano Cousin. He's a Canadian. He used to coach the Cameroonian under-20 team. Now, do you know any tournament that the Cameroonian under-20 team won? No, but that doesn't mean he's not a good manager. And also the fact that Rigobert Song hasn't coached at club level. I'll give you another example. Michel Platini. Michel Platini became the coach of the French national team with very little coaching experience in terms of club level. But he was a national team legend. He didn't need to go and prove himself anyway. He had his badges. You don't need to be a super coach at a certain level. There are some people who just go in. Pep Guardiola went straight from the academy straight into the first team. Now, Raul has just left Real Madrid because he wasn't given his chance from the Castilla to get into the first team. So the reason it's not a must that you have to go through those stages. Yes, it wasn't a very successful tenure, but we are where we are. We cannot pass judgment yet on Mr. Mark Brace. He is doing a good job. But whether Cameroon would win with the Nations Cup or qualify for the World Cup is another question. And for me, I just think we've lost ground in terms of transitioning and in terms of coordinating a philosophy through all the sets of the national team, from under 16 through all the way to the senior national team. But that's what it is, and we have to deal with it. But these are the difficulties. One of the difficulties, the most significant difficulty from the fallout of the differences between Fecafoot and Ministry of Sports and Education and Physical Education, the disconnect within the national teams.
Yeah, and it's quite unfortunate because these two entities are supposed to. I mean, they are one, right? Because we know Fecafoot is basically under, the Ministry of Sports. Although they have to work, independently from that organization. However, if they don't look onto one direction, then there cannot be any synergy, right? They working together, let's say, from the grassroots football upwards. If they're always fighting, then all the energy is actually put on fights, unnecessary fights, instead of building the football. Because now it's as if Mark Breeze doesn't have all the support of Fecafoot just because ministry is intervening. And we have seen that hurt the results of the national team.
Yeah.
Although some will not agree, Joachim is the one preparing games, and he's not there to tell the coach that, hey, this is what I see. If they cannot communicate, strategies, that's a handicap indirectly for the coach.
It is a handicap. And I struggle to see how we get out of this without FIFA intervening. In terms of his results, he has done well. He's done well so far. Although we've only won one away game so far against Kenya, 1-0. We struggled against teams like Eswatini, Namibia, which are also teams that, Rigobert Song did struggle against. But this brings us to the issue of having international managers or foreign managers as the managers of the national team. It links straight into that. Maybe you're better placed to tell us what your man Bruce Arena has been saying in relation to having foreign managers manage your national team, and then we can see how that links to Cameroon.
Yeah, I think Bruce Arena. I mean, he's been somehow right. I would say spot on because he was given. I think he was one of the American coaches to have been given an opportunity, you know, to coach the national team. You know, so when he sees a guy like Pochettino after Jurgen Klopp, when Jurgen Klopp came, there it was not the same energy, right? Because Jurgen Klopp came and he imposed a system where many players have grown from within, right? Many American players can say it was thanks to the system that Jurgen Klopp actually imposed. However, Bruce Arena is now saying that there's no need going for foreign coaches because we have a competitive league, we have Americans that coach in the league, and why should they not be given, that opportunity over and over?
Yeah.
I mean, he has a point.
Yeah, and he did say something that was very important to me. But before I come to that, what I tried to do was to look at the current teams that have qualified for the AFCON. There are 24 teams that have qualified for the AFCON so far, and of the 24 teams, 10 are managed by their nationals, 13 are managed by African managers, and 11 of those teams are managed by non-Africans. So you have 4 Belgian managers, 1 French, 1 Bosnian, 2 Germans, 1 Israelite, 1 Canadian, and 1 Portuguese. So 10 managers manage their own countries, which is a good thing. Now, coming back to what he was saying, Bruce Arena, and again, I will link this to Cameroon. He was talking about the culture, the environment, the players. I think he said something like you have to know the animal that you're dealing with. And then the pride of the national team. We're talking about patriotism here. And having someone from outside don't understand it. Someone from outside won't understand it, especially our country. So he was saying the USA. And this is particular for Cameroon as well. And this is where, for me, Samuel Eto'o's appointment of Rigobert Song was very important, in the sense that he might not be tactically very sound, which I still argue he is, as proven against Brazil and against Algeria. Very tough games. That psychologically, there was no better person at that point in time to help build a philosophy and a culture across the board. I mean, someone that any Cameroonian player would look up to and go, yes, Capi. They might call him Capi or whatever, but they know that if you have to learn about winning from someone in life, this is the person. 2 people you want to look up to, Rigobert, as footballers, Rigobert Song and Samuel Eto'o. So that for me was very important. And I think that's one of the places where we are failing at the moment is national pride, the importance of the national team. We have 2 people who would have given their lives to play for Cameroon, who would do everything to play for Cameroon, who would do anything to push Cameroonian football forward. But they are being treated by the federation in a way. And this is not to talk against Mark Brissy. He's so unfortunate to find himself in that position. But I feel that the message being sent out by Bruce Arena couldn't be any clearer, and it fits very rightly with the situation of the Cameroonian national team.
Yeah, but I don't think it fits like perfect because the Americans, first of all, they build their football, right? From grassroots level right up to the leagues. It's competitive. And then we can see these coaches going at each other. It's not the same for Cameroon. Any coach that they will appoint for Cameroon, most of us, we don't actually know them. We have not seen them coach. So I won't compare in that aspect. I won't compare it, to the American game. You know.
No, it's not about the American game, and this is where again I go back to the fact that okay, let's take for example, like I said before, that the psychology and the mental side for me in football counts more than the tactical side of it. The tactics is easy to understand for players, but the psychology in the player's head, transmitting the message and the psychology and the mentality to the players to go in and fight for their country. There are two different things. There are two different things. And that's what Bruce Arena, one of the things he's saying. No one no one can put the interest of your country more than the national of that country. That's what he was saying. So in sports psychology, you have phases. So you introduce the philosophy that you want, and then the players have to participate in it or become involved in it. And then you have to look at the structures that you have, and then the cultural aspects. If you look at this introductions, involvement, the structural aspects of it, and then the cultural aspects of it, Mark Brice is almost absent in all the phases of inculcating the psychological aspect into the players.
But what would you say to those who told you that we have won African Cup of Nations without local coaches?
Well, it's always a blessing when you come into a team, into a country, and you have a group of players that are super talented. It's one thing when you do not have. I would say the one manager that really worked hard to win a trophy in Cameroon is Hugo Bros. Every other single manager in Cameroon came at a time when Cameroon had players that were ready to deliver. I would say to some extent, Claude Leroy, because he had to change a few things in the Cameroon national team setup. Claude Leroy actually moved Koundé Emmanuel to center back to integrate Mbo Emile and to bring in Kanabik, So there were changes, and Deep Akem as well. So he did make some changes. But Claude Leroy absolutely absorbed himself into the culture of Cameroonian football. This guy was attending all local games, and he actually brought this thing where he had the selection that he had with him in Yaoundé, most of the players playing in Canon and Tonnerre, and he was taking them around the country playing against provincial selections. So you would have the Northwest selection play against the national team, the West selection play against the national team, and this is how he came up with different players that were not in the national setup.
So I
This is
guess
how he found new players. And Clemens Westerhoff used the same tactics when he was appointed manager of Nigeria. That's how he came up with Amunike and all these guys by organizing little tournaments around the country to pick up players. Now we have a manager, I do not know, but I have been told he doesn't live in Cameroon. I do not know how true that is. I'm not on the ground. I cannot confirm that. But for me, leaving aside the issue of appointing him at this time, there is that clear disconnect between him and the philosophy of the Cameroonian national team and instilling a new mentality in this team.
Yeah, but that would not.
This is all not down to him. This is down
Exactly.
to the dynamics within which he finds himself in the national team.
Yeah, because I will not just associate that only to him being the coach. And the reason I've always stressed that we should, I mean, both entities, Fecafoot and Ministry, should be working together is because beyond the national team level, we have lots of work to do at the grassroots level in order to bring all regions together in order to build a better culture of our football, right? Because everyone is looking at national team level, but we don't prepare for that transition. We don't give the kids at home a chance to bridge the gap between them and professionals. So many people are asking, where are the locals? It was
Now,
almost 7 months.
now,
Our league was shut down for almost 6-7 months.
yeah.
So
Now,
how do you get these guys competitive?
Now, and this is the problem for me. Again, this is the other problem of the fallout of these difficulties, of the fallout between the Fecafoot and the Ministry of Sports and Physical Education. as you can see, whilst his excuse was that he was using the convention to appoint a manager, he is also now becoming involved in the running of the football clubs in Cameroon, because he had a meeting not long ago with with some club presidents, that baffled a lot of people. What are you doing having a meeting with club presidents? That's not your remit. It's as if we now have a ministry of football as opposed to Ministry of Sports and Physical Education. And going back to what you were saying in terms of using locals, it baffles me that we seem to focus too much on football managers being foreigners when we have Cameroonians as ministers, and we have Cameroonians as directors, or we have Cameroonians as teachers teaching children. So are they trying to tell me that the only field in Cameroon in which we have no qualified professionals is football? Volleyball, we've had Cameroonian managers. Handball, we've had Cameroonian managers. Basketball, we've had Cameroonian managers. In athletics, in boxing, every other discipline. But we somehow feel that when it comes to football, our own people are not able to be managers of the national team. Now, I did a compilation of the list of our managers, from 1965. We've had about 36 or 37 or more managers, 39 managers. And in that time, only 12 of them at some point have been Cameroonians. And sometimes it's just in an interim role, or they're managing a single game. I'm saying 12 times the national team has been managed by a Cameroonian. But when you look at it in detail, you've got someone like Jules Nyonga, who's been the manager about 4 different times. I also remember there was a time when Jean-Pierre Sadi was appointed, I think for a week or something. He never even had the opportunity to coach the team. It was an uproar. How can you have such a person be the national team manager? What is so wrong about a Cameroonian being the manager of the Cameroonian national team?
I think a lot of people do agree with you, and it's that point where a lot of people want to see, and that's why a lot of people supported Rigobert's song from the start. But when the results started going downhill, some people separated themselves from Rigobert's song. However, we have guys like Agbo Hans, we have guys like what's his name, Webo. I mean, we have so many certified guys who can actually coach. But my problem is that our league, the level of our league needs to be very competitive so that us fans can see these coaches compete in these various league teams, and we can actually have a better vision of who can coach and who cannot coach.
Okay, I totally hear you. Let's go back to the list of managers for the teams that have qualified for the AFCON so far. I want to come back at you with that one. Okay, so in terms of league managers that are managing in their league, so we have, for example, Mozambique. So Mozambique is managed by a Mozambican, Chiquinho Conde. Okay, we have Gabon. It's managed by a Gabonese, Thierry Muyuma. Okay, we have Ghana is managed by a Ghanaian. We have
Equatorial Guinea.
Tanzania is managed by a Tanzanian, and Tunisia a Tunisian. So what I'm simply saying is, if you look at some of these countries like Gabon and Mozambique, I mean, how many football clubs do you know from Mozambique? How many football clubs do you know from Gabon? But these guys, Equatorial Guinea, managed by an Equatorial Guinean. Burkina Faso, managed by a Burkinabe. So these guys are trusting in their own nationals to be able to deliver, to be able to do the job. We have MSFI in Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire is exactly in a similar situation like Cameroon. Former African great clubs, ASEC Abidjan, Africa Sport Abidjan. They are not the same clubs anymore, similar to Cameroon. So the league is struggling, yet they still have an Ivorian manager. And going back to like you said, that all of our Nations Cup trophies have been won by foreign managers.